A few years ago, I wrote a blog post basically recounting word for word a story which was told by Spencer W. Kimball in the spring 1975 General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I've been thinking about that story again. I've put a link to that blog post in the comments. Basically, Lord George Hall was an evil man, and he fell in love with a simple country girl and proposed marriage to her. The girl refused him because he was an evil-looking man and said she'd only marry a good man with a saint-like face. So Lord George Hall went to town in London and got a guy named Aeneas to make him a wax mask to look like a saintly person. He tried to make amends for the things he did, and years later his enemies caught up with him and ripped that mask off in front of his beloved. And when the mask came off, he no longer looked like the evil man that he'd been before, but had been transformed. So, call it coincidence, but I just finished watching season 1 of a show on HBO called Unforgotten. And you see various characters having their secrets uncovered that had been left alone for 40 years. Where this all comes together is that I think the thing I've been struggling with most in my faith crisis is realizing just how evil the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its leaders have been. And that, unfortunately, they have been wearing a mask. And when this mask has been lifted off, it hasn't revealed anything but the horrible, awful, evil, ugly truth. I used to find great comfort in the story of Lord George Hall because, like the woman in the Unforgotten series who had been a racist and then spent the rest of her life trying to make amends for the actions that she'd done as a young girl. And other people I've heard, like Laura Schlesinger, apparently had a bad past. I've tried to undo what I did, tried to live a better life. Sort of like Jean Valjean in Les Miserables getting another chance. But I also felt comfort from the same story because I knew that my abuser, my LDS ecclesiastical abuser, who ended up being my first husband, was wearing a mask and that it wasn't working. That if that mask was ripped off, it would still reveal the evil man that he was, no matter how many people he was fooling, because I had to deal with him and my kids had to deal with him. But I never thought that the same thing would apply to the church that told me this story. Spencer W. Kimball was among those men who bought the Mark Hoffman papers. All these men I was raised with, who were my leaders I looked up to, were lying mask wearers.